Module 16, revising sentences and paragraphs. As our book talks about, good business writing sounds like a person talking to another person. It really rides that line between friendly versus overly personal and sort of informal versus formal. So good, strong business writing is really direct. It sounds friendly and approachable, and yet it maintains a kind of formality that implies the kind of professional situation that you're writing in. And so actually looking at this at the line level, at the sentence and paragraph level, really, as our book also says on page 287, it makes the difference between kind of oh-so-so documents and really effective business communication. One of the places that people get into trouble with this is that actually business writing is very different than academic writing in its style. Okay, so these sentences and these concepts in Module 16 are all about style differences. And down here I have a quote that talks about how good business style allows for some individual variation, which has to do with both adapting to the specific situation and audience, as well as individual voice, and just how different people like to interact with others and their kind of interpersonal skills and communication. But going back to this concept of business versus academic style, they differ in language usage. Okay, so usually business writing is more clear, concise, and specific in its wording. And we all have kind of this image in our minds from cultural belief systems about academics just pontificating and really talking in very kind of hoity-toity, long drawn out language with a lot of complicated words. And the reason I have this picture of a lecture hall here is that, in fact, academic culture is really based on the idea of individual expertise, and we've created entire rooms, lecture halls, for people to listen to one person talk at length, extensively, in kind of really, deep and analytical ways about a topic. And so that's a really kind of artificial communication situation in some ways. Business communication is much more clear, direct, concise. It's all about getting the job done. It's much more like this picture here, where you have someone who's trying to establish a good working relationship with someone else quickly and then accomplish a certain task. And so you can just even think about the differences in the way they use language based on the kinds of situations where the language occurs. Usually business writing is more personal in its address of the reader. Again, look at the differences between these two pictures. Often in business, you're dealing with a small group of people or one-on-one. And in academic writing, you're often writing or speaking to a much more public and wide audience, almost an anonymous audience. Whereas in business, we often know our specific reader really well. We know exactly who that is. Okay, so we can be more personal. And by that, I don't mean informal. I just mean more friendly and more targeted to our specific relationship to that person. Now, business and academic writing also differ in purpose and style. Business writing is meant to get a job done. That's its purpose, get her done. And it will adjust information and tone for specific individual readers. However, academic writing is usually meant to demonstrate or create knowledge, and it assumes this kind of big, broad, educated, almost anonymous audience. It doesn't adapt itself for individual audience members' needs, and it maintains a fairly formal and impersonal tone, that kind of public oratory tone. Now, we're going to talk about how to actually really shape your writing to be strong in a business communication situation. And that is related to this quote at the bottom here, that confident people are more direct. And so we are going to work on ways to edit your writing so that you sound confident, right? So that you have this strong, confident business persona, even if you don't feel that way always in every situation. All right, so business writing, we've just established, is different from academic writing in its style, but it's also different depending on the genre or form that you're using. For instance, letters and memos go to very different audiences. So while these may follow the rules of business style to be more friendly and specific, you have to consider where your audience is. Now, are you writing a memo that might actually be going to a wider audience and a varied audience, so that in some ways you're actually more in this situation than this one, right? However, a letter might actually mimic this one-to-one communication much more than a memo. And so we have to think about what level of technical jargon we can use depending on the information, knowledge, and expertise levels of our audience. We also have to think about whether or not we're writing to people who are on the same level as us, peers, coworkers, or are we writing to our supervisor, someone who's above us? Or are we writing to a customer or someone who we supervise? That all affects the way that we address the reader and the kinds of information that we include, as well as what we explain and how we say it. As this notes, memos may be more impersonal and less technical because they address a larger number of people. Okay, but that depends on the situation or context. You can write memos to individual people as well. So we have to consider that each of these is very situational. Letters may be more personal and maybe more specific. They may address the reader with more specific information depending on their perceived knowledge and understanding of the subject. So you might actually use more technical jargon in a specific letter to someone who you know actually understands those terms. Reports, on the other hand, start to slide down the scale more like academic writing in their address and their style. They may be more impersonal and objective in their tone. And that's because their purposes are somewhat closer to academic purposes for writing, which is to demonstrate, create, or share information and knowledge. Okay, how can we apply this? Usually, business writing is more clear, concise, and specific in its wording than academic writing, as we talked about. So in academic writing, you know, there's much more of a kind of allowance for, sorry, I was trying to flip that around, an allowance for kind of pontificating, for kind of padding our writing with extended explanations, with elaborated development in our paragraphs. But in business writing, we want to get the job done quickly, and we want to be more direct. And so, for instance, we want to eliminate words that say nothing and combine our sentences to get rid of those unnecessary words. So let's look at this example. Employees who were just hired and are therefore defined as novice employees by the company should take steps to ensure that they attend a mandatory training session that is required of all novice employees. Well, let's look at this. Novice actually means new employee, so we already know they're new if they were just hired. So maybe we can actually just eliminate this entire bit here by saying new employees. Okay, now we're telling these employees that they should take steps to ensure that they attend a mandatory training session that is required. Well, note that we're both ordering them to go to something that we've already said is mandatory, which means the same as required. Okay, so perhaps we just say this: new employees must attend a mandatory training session that gets across the same meaning in a lot fewer words. It's much more direct, it's easier to read, it gets the main point across. We know if you're a new employee, you have to attend a mandatory training session. You can also combine sentences to eliminate unnecessary words. Now notice in this paragraph, 3 of the sentences actually start in the same way. They start with our. Our employees want our customers to have a positive experience shopping in our store. Our employees are trained to provide good customer service. Our customers expect to have a positive experience shopping at our store. Just the repetition here is hard to read. Because both our employees and our customers want the same thing, we have the highest customer satisfaction rating of any store in the company. Well, we can just go ahead. It seems to me that the key points are really down here. We have this high customer satisfaction rating because everybody wants the same thing. And so if we were to take this and perhaps try to expand this sentence to meet the needs of the other sentences, we can probably reduce the number of words that we're using to communicate this information. So because maybe we could say, because our employees are trained in good customer service, and our customers want a positive shopping experience. Or perhaps we want to reverse the order of this information. Because our customers want a positive shopping experience, and our employees are trained in good customer service and want the same thing, we have the highest customer satisfaction rating of any store in the company. So we can actually combine all of these like 4 sentences down into one sentence that's much shorter and gets across the same idea, which is much more effective. It's quicker, it saves time, and so. All right, language usage, be direct. There are some line level sentence modifications that you can make to communicate your information much more confidently and directly. You want to put the meaning of your sentence into the subject and verb and not the prepositional phrases. You also can look for these words that end with ment, ion, and al. These are often hidden verbs, so we can modify them. Phrases like make a payment, pay says the same thing in shorter words, and it's much more direct and confident. So for example, many of our customers receive the benefits of being a preferred member. We can actually just reduce this down to make this the verb. Many of our customers benefit from being a preferred member. Notice that we've shortened our sentence, made it much more direct and clear. Now you want to also use action verbs rather than be verbs or passive constructions. We talked a little bit about this in terms of not using you in negative situations, which seems accusatory or as though you're blaming the reader. So for instance, this is a passive construction that makes it seem as though the sentence has no actor, that this just happened on its own. The change order was processed by the subcontractor. Now, an active construction would actually make the subcontractor the actor in the sentence. The subcontractor processed. So notice that I'm getting rid of this be verb was. And I've actually eliminated some words and made that sentence shorter as well. Notice this second sentence. The credit card offers were sent by the customer service department. Here's that be verb, were. So already we have a passive construction. We can see that. We can also see that credit card offers don't actually get sent. They're sent by someone. And so again, we've hidden the meaning of the sentence and the actor of the sentence in this prepositional phrase here at the end. So we can make this much stronger by saying the customer service department sent the credit card offers. We've eliminated some of those meaningless or unnecessary prepositional phrases, made the sentence an active sentence rather than a passive sentence, shortened it, and conveyed our meaning much more clearly because the actor of the sentence, the customer service department, is now getting credit for what they actually accomplished. Now, we also want to be aware in style and in revision at the sentence level about our tone and attitude. So usually business writing is more personal in its address of the reader. As we talked about in that first picture, right? You're trying to establish a relationship. You're not just talking to a room of people. And so you really want to be aware of how to be friendly and yet formal enough and professional enough in an American business setting. So one of the things that we've discussed from Module 6 is putting your readers in the sentence, really writing the sentence from the reader's point of view and using you attitude. Now here's the line you have to draw. You want to both be polite and friendly, but not overly personal or emotional. There's a real cultural kind of separation between personal and business life in American business culture. And so giving too many details about your personal life, about your personal feelings or emotions, is considered unprofessional. So politeness is honored and valued, friendliness is honored and valued, but overly emotional or personal details are seen as far too informal. You also want to consider the relationship between you and your audience. Are you writing to your boss, or are you writing to customers? Do you have a sensitive relationship? Maybe there's been a previous negative correspondence with this customer or your coworkers, in which case you need to actually pay attention to your tone and try to be more polite and even deferential when you're writing to someone who's your superior. So rather than ending sentences with "you can call me" or "let me know," you want to add polite words like "please," or an even more polite version, especially if you're writing to a boss or a superior, is to phrase the request as a question. That's the highest level of politeness. So rather than saying, "you can call me if you have any questions," you might say, "please let me know if you have any questions," which is phrasing it as a request, or "would you please call me if you have any questions," is even more polite, phrasing it as a question. Again, those kinds of direct statements at the ends of emails and letters actually have a subconscious effect. I've read cover letters or job application letters that basically are really aggressive in their request for an interview at the end, and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth as a reader. It seems as though the person's being overly familiar and overly aggressive and arrogant in their address, and that tone and attitude can put your readers off. All right, we've talked a little bit about clear paragraph unity and about the fact that a paragraph needs a bottom. It can't just have a top and a topic sentence. You need to actually finish up your paragraphs with links back to the primary purpose or topic sentence. And so as we discussed, many times people have been taught that they need that topic sentence and supporting details, but they've never been actually instructed to finish out their paragraph with a bottom or link back to that main idea, so that the reader understands the relationship between the details and the claim. We can also improve the flow of our entire documents by connecting ideas between sentences and across paragraphs with transition words. But we want to use the appropriate transition words for the situation. So notice that transitions are situational. If you're addressing connection between two ideas, you use words like additionally, also, or similarly. Contrast is often indicated by words like however or but. Cause and effect, these might be in some kind of link statement at the end of a paragraph. As a result, because, therefore, for this reason. Again, note if you have these kinds of introductory elements at the beginning of your sentence, they'll be followed by a comma. Additionally, you might be describing within a paragraph something that happens in a sequence or time. And so, of course, these sequential transitions are helpful to the reader so that they can track the relationship between the ideas. Okay, those are some key ideas to help you with revising your sentences for good business style. Remember, again, the key things that you want to think about are tone, and then being clear, concise, and specific. So tightening your wording, being confident by using active rather than passive verbs, and then just assisting your reader with the meaning of the sentences and addressing their personal needs and the relationship that you have with them.